Is being recorded. All right. Hello, hello. Can everybody hear me all right? I see in the chat that question about my audio. Is there any issues with anybody? All right. So it looks like the majority things seem fine. Some feedback that I received from my last classes is I have a tendency to talk a little fast. So if I'm going a little fast for you, feel right free to just jump in either on audio or in the chat and just be like, hey, can you repeat that? Can you slow it down a bit? Just I'm a fast talker. Grew up in San Francisco cities, you know. But all right, cool. So let's get this going. I guess hello everyone. My name is Professor Adonay. I'm really excited to be talking to you today about La Santa Muerte. Lately, in the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic, even Santa Muerte has taken the occult and witchy worlds by storm. I mean, I have seen people work with her, like I think I saw earlier today, Santa Muerte, Sweden. So, you know, she's a long ways from home now. You know, she's originally Mexican. So I figured, why not? And of course, cats are now being cats right now. Not. Sorry about that. She's never done this climbing particular bit, and my cat Hilda decided to right now was the time. Where was I? But yeah, so she's kind of, you know, she's kind of everywhere now. So I figure with one of her feast days just behind us, which was September 9th, and the other, her more classic traditional feast day, November 2nd, Dia de Muertos, Dia de los Difuntos, coming up, I figured this would be a good time to talk about her and learn a little bit more about this fairly misunderstood saint of death. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, before we really begin, there's one thing I want to just make sure I cover, and that is the terms Aztec versus Mexika. So, you see this this X here in that second one that almost looks like Mexico with a K, right? And a K-A instead of a C-O. The term Aztec was applied to these group of peoples, the Nahuatl peoples, people who spoke the language of Nahuatl, by later European anthropologists, but that is not what they would ever have referred to themselves as. They refer to themselves as the Mexika. In Nahuatl, the language of the Mexika, the X has a sh sound. And so when you hear me say the term Mexika for the rest of this lecture, the rest of this class, just make sure like, oh, Aztec, you know, right? Whatever you know, just kind of put that in there. So going forward, you know, I'm trying, one of my big missions is taking even, you know, adding decolonized language into our modern gnosis of things. So that is the term we are going to be going with. You'll sometimes see it spelled with a C, you'll sometimes spell it with a K like that. But that also does mean that Mexico should be pronounced Mexico. And despite all the cute, you know, you axolotl questions, right? Axolotl is actually pronounced axolotl. So all those cute little t-shirts and memes are not actually based off a colonized understanding of the word of the name. So little sad face on there, but yes, Mexika. So that is definitely a thing. Issue related to Pachamama. No, so Pachamama, if I recall correctly, is Incan or Mayan, one of the two. She's not. Pachamama is not Aztec. It's not Mexika. Um, bam, bam. Mine. There we go. Yes, thank you. I blame the fact that I have not had enough coffee this evening. Um, but yeah. So with all that out of the way, we're gonna get into just who she is. So La Santa Muerte is a Mexican folk saint. What that kind of means is that she popped up in a very Catholic society, in a Catholic region of the world. Um, and people work with her as they would any other saints, like, the Virgen de Guadalupe or San Judas. Um, but she is not recognized by the Catholic Church. This is a fairly common practice in very, very Catholic countries. You'll see folk saints and folk saint practices not only throughout Latin America, but you'll also see it in Italy and the Mediterranean, the overall Mediterranean. You'll see it in Ireland a bit as well. Pretty much where there's Catholics, there's somebody being like, we're going to do this, even though the Catholic Church itself is saying not to. So La Muerte herself is half um, Mexika. She comes from the Mexika goddess of death, Mictecasuat, and who is the goddess of death who presided over this land of Mictlan, which we'll get into in a little bit, and half Spanish. It is said that in Iberian folklore from around colonial times and just before, the Grim Reaper, that he had a wife and her name was La Parca, and she was a lot more reasonable, understanding than he was, and so it is thought that La Parca mixed with Mictecasuat and created the image and the iconography of what we would now know as La Santa Muerte. Um, um, Seeing that question, is she represented as the skeleton as depicted here? Kind of reminds me of Lady Hell. Yeah, she's commonly depicted as a skeleton. There are some imagery that will have like a half human face, half skeleton face. So that is definitely a newer thing. But I mean, goddesses of death ruling over the underworld. At a certain point, I'm just like, we were all tapped into the same damn thing, and I say that as well as where I have my Santa Muerte altar on one side of the room facing my partner's hell statue and altar. So um, they definitely, I like to think they're just like, what's up? So again, back over here. So yeah, so half Spanish La Parca, half Spanish, half Mexica Mitecasuat. Her tradition is a mixture of folk Catholicism. So again, that like working with saints in ways that the Catholic Church may not necessarily deem appropriate. Um, and I'll get into some of what that looks like later as well. Um, but I mean, just as a little teaser, like I have seen some people, like some like folk saint practices, where like say they're asking La Virgen, right, the Virgin Mary, the Mother of God, right? They're asking her for something, and she's not giving, she's not cooperating. They will like turn her upside down, her statue upside down in a glass of water, and are like, you're gonna hang out upside down. You have to do that. Your head of your statue literally, underwater until you do what I want. So yeah, folk Catholics, they don't play. So yeah, so it's definitely to make sure that um Mexika mythology, and then her cult has also been super influenced by Santeria and other ADR traditions, that's African diaspora religions. So Santeria, Voodoo, the 21 divisions, Candomblé, all those sorts of traditions. But predominantly Santeria has been one of the number one influences on her tradition. Um, as we see here, she's a patron saint of women, the queer community. She actively uh, trans women specifically, especially in Mexico, work with her a lot. She's also patronized of anybody who works at night, prostitutes or sex workers. One of an old good friend of mine was a trans woman sex worker who had a Santa Muerte altar right in her, in her business space, and made sure La Muerte, kept her safe. Taxi cab drivers, that one's always struck me as a bit of an odd one, but that kind of goes with people who work at night. Um, and especially in Mexico, and especially in the cities, um, taxi cab driving is definitely not the safest job in the world. Um, and then those who work with death, so that could be morticians, coroners, and those sorts of things, but also like death doulas and such, and those who are near death daily. So that a lot of the time, that one and the last one, the outcasts of society, those two are pretty much almost a catch-all of, did you grow up in a rough neighborhood where your life wasn't always, your safety wasn't always guaranteed, where, just by your very existence, did mainstream culture have a problem with you? Um, she's got your back, so um, she's a very, she likes those of us who the mainstream doesn't particularly appreciate or value. And she says that she's going to take care of us, and I love that. But the scythe kind of looks like a straight razor. And it might be also that particular depiction, especially with the hinge we got going on over here. But her scythe will vary, and a lot of her statues, they just look like your typical scythes. But I do love this particular image. Um, bam. So now that we know surface level, just who she is and where she came from, let's get into it. Let's dig. So again, I want to have like here's like a visual representation of that full Catholicism. Um, you could see like the streamers and the flowers all around, like the paintings and everything. This here in the center is a snapshot from one of the codices, uh, some of the only documents we have of from the Mexika and their legends and their stories. Um, the codices, well, one of the easiest ones to find is like the Borgia Codice Codex. Um, their reliability is hit and miss. Your mileage may vary if you're trying to rebuild or check them out for a cohesive, true, and honest system. Because like everywhere they went, the church had a tendency to burn books, ban books, if you will, and censor um, what they considered pagan and satanic traditions, right? And so some of the codices have show clear signs of alteration. Some we know were written like while it might have been a Mexika person putting it all down and using their language and their iconography. It was definitely done with a priest or a monk or somebody pretty much watching over them and being like, no, you can't include that. No, you can't include that. Um, so trying to rebuild some of these traditions have been very, very tricky for that reason. And then here we have a Santera doing a little bit of cartomancy. Um, Santeria, Santero's one of their telltales is the all white. That is definitely a Santero thing. So let's start with her Mexica origins. I'm gonna double check the chat real quick. I'm trying to make sure I keep up with that. And yeah, censorship basically. Um, so her Mexica origins. She comes from the Lady of the Dead, which is this name right here. That's what this name translates to. This is a Mitakasiwap. The TL has a silent. That L is silent, so it's like a Mitakasiwap. would be it. Obviously, my pronunciation is not going to be perfect, but there are still Nahuatl speakers to this day. So we can definitely find some proper pronunciations out there, but it's going to be a little different than the way they probably would have said it back in the day. So she ruled Mictlan with her husband, the Lord of the Dead, Mictlan Tesiwatli, with the I at the end, Mictlan Tesiwatli. The legends go that she was born and sacrificed as an infant. Some folks have used this kind of story to almost say that Santa Muerte, post dates life, that she was essentially human and didn't always exist. Others cite, especially like the Catholic ones, cite some certain biblical references as to the fact that she was always around. The description below that one, though, has always been one of my favorites when I think about her. It says that her jaw can unhinge and to swallow the stars whole. She It was always the way she's depicted in the codices and some of the other surviving documents is half of her face is just rotting flesh and the other half is a skull. And that her jaw is falling flayed around, is falling, barely hanging on by the cinches of the remaining rotting flesh, and is opening wide to swallow the stars, to swallow the universe whole. And I think that's very indicative of her role as the goddess of the goddess of the underworld. The importance of this type of imagery and just this all-encompassing, I think, is really relevant in that the ancient festival that would become Dia de Muertos, which we're going to talk about next week and the following, was done in her honor. If you thought Dia de Muertos was a newer colonized phenomenon, you're mistaken. And Santa Muerte has been at the heart of it since the very, very center, since very, very beginning. One way that I see this currently depicted, this idea of the jaws, to swallow stars, is when you see her iconography of La Muerte. She is either stepping on or carrying a globe. So again, that the universe is in the palm of her hands, that she retains all of this, the entirety of existence, right? As all Mexika gods and goddesses, she had an animal form, which was an owl, which you could still see in her symbolism today. She's commonly depicted with an owl on her shoulder, an owl at her feet, an owl on her arm. Some Santa Maristas, especially European ones, have been trying to say that the fact that an owl is her animal form, it shows that she's actually European in origin, because that ties her to Hecate and other European chthonic deities that tie to owls. But I think they're leaving out the fact that Mictlan had, an owl form for an animal. And so that is another big indicator of her indigenous origins. And once again, the consuming the world portion. The other part is the fact of that death is feminine. So with, obviously with the colonizers bringing Spanish, right? Death is already feminine in that one, but particularly here, while the Lord of the Dead had a role to play in the ancient Dia de Muertos, it was Mictlan that was like the head honcho of this bit. Like, she was the main focus, right? And so the fact that we see death embodied again as feminine coming up in Mexico, where our death holidays were focused on this feminine death goddess, I think says a lot, again, to her indigenous origins. So the reason I think I'm pointing a lot of this out and kind of almost repeating myself here is there's a lot of folks who are out there trying to say that Santa Muerte is strictly European. and that she's not indigenous, that she doesn't belong to Mexicans. There was one guy who had a Santa Muerte church in New Orleans, of all places. It was a white dude, and he was like, "This is my, I think it was literally called the Chapel of Santa Muerte." If we're gonna pronounce it probably the way he pronounced it. No, I've literally seen it. He does not pronounce it Santa Muerte. It's like Santa Muerte. Um, the Santa Muerte Chapel, and he went on record, was literally like, that she is strictly Spanish, and you could tell that by her, Catholic robes and her scythe, which are all Grim Reaper esque, and her name, and the fact that she's like Spanish and all these things, and that the literally started going like that the Mexicans stole her from the Europeans, and she was going to take her back. He was going to take her back to where she rightfully belonged with white folks, and that she was, did not belong to brown people at all. And this is something you hear, not all that, not all that uncommon. Um, it's not, yeah, it's not all that common. Just checking the chat again. Up, down, the brains. Oh yeah, her and Lila sharing the owl. Heck yeah. Um, so I'm really, so because of that, I mean, even like one of her main, his like chroniclers, the anthropologist, Andrew Chestnut, whose book I do recommend, even he tries to state that she is most likely predominantly European in origin, not indigenous. And again, I disagree with that. That is my take. I see a lot of other Latino practitioners who disagree with that. There are some Latinos who do try to state that she's more white. But Latinos and internalized racism and colorism is definitely a thing. So I don't always, we're not going to buy into any of that. But yeah, it's so if it seems like I'm repeating myself, I'm trying to make a point that, yeah, we can interpret these like the owl and her being feminine as like, indicators that she's European, but it also ties back to her being indigenous. I did see a question earlier: is she tied to the world origin story? There is, and within folk Catholicism, they tie her into the biblical creation story. As far as the world creation stories within like the Mexika folklore, like the whole five sons and everything. She does pop up. If you know the story where Quetzalcoatl steals the bones of one of the previous human races and drops them on his way out, and then that's why they're broken. That's why they like to explain that Latinos and Latin Americans that were very, very short. I mean, yeah, that it is that she was the one guarding that Mictecasuat was the one guarding the bones. And Quetzalcoatl had pretty much got past her and tricked her in being able to get the bones to create this new race. But aside from that little bit, with again, Quetzalcoatl is kind of the main focus of that particular story. But she does pop up there. So yeah, which is again one of those things of like she's there guarding the bones. She's been there guarding the bones through all five sons. We have creation stories of like when Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca and the rest of them were born and created. But her and her husband are just like they're chilling just since the beginning. Like, all right, you know, um, they've just always been here. So, some of the modern carryovers from her days as Mictecasuat is, like I mentioned, Dia de Muertos. A little fun note here in case you're not able to attend the Dia de Muertos classes and miss this little fun fact. You might notice I'm calling it Dia de Muertos, not Dia de los Muertos. That is on purpose. Dia de Muertos is the true name of the holiday, day of the, because dead means of the, essentially in this particular context, of the dead. but it was only Dia de Muertos was traditionally only a southern Mexican holiday. It wasn't really popular up north and throughout most of the rest of the country. Um, and so, I mean, it wasn't until the 70s that it became even like an official holiday for the state, for the country. And so when it became an official holiday in the 70s, or 60s, that's when like Chicanos and Mexican immigrants were kind of tapping into it. And so when you translate Dia de Muertos into English, Day of the Dead, right? Um, and then you translate that back into Spanish, like so you back translate, you transliterate it rather than translate it. Dia de los Muertos. That's where the los kind of comes from. It's a transliteration of the English translation of Dia de Muertos. So just a little fun fact there. So if you want to, sound smart to your friends, it's always a bit of a fun one. So yeah, so Dia de Muertos is definitely the whole one of the holdovers. Some of her offerings that we'll get into a lot later, but some of the specific ones like chocolate cempasúchil, which is Mexican marigolds. If you saw Coco, and if you haven't, you should. Dang it, you should. Coco is amazing. You will cry. It's beautiful. Um, it's the orange flower that they have everywhere that the bridge is built off of and everything. I mean, like I even incorporated some of that Sempasuchi bridge into some of my ritual work. It's such beautiful imagery in that movie. Um, and then chocolate was sacred to the Mexika, and was used during rituals a lot as well. And then also burning copal. Um, Copal is also another holdover. I feel like Copal at this point has kind of gotten the sage or Palo Santo treatment, but it's very specific to her as well. Oh, bam. Disney adult here. I love Coco. Heck yeah. Uh, how is it spelled? The flower. So if you just type in Mexican marigold, that'll come up. But if you want to write up the actual like the Nahuatl name of it, Sempas. Ooh, I'm putting it in the chat. Sempasuchi. Cool. There you go. Um, Another one to not sleep on for Dia de Muertos. Um, Book of Life. It's got Diego Luna in it. Um, Cassian from the Star Wars franchise. It's got him in it. He does some of the voice. It's a stop motion animation, I think, or no, it's like the animation is almost like box trolls. But it's a jukebox musical, so heads up on that. But oh my god, it is also so good. Um, I can get caught up in Latino media all day. um, and then also more of her holdovers are her ties specifically to brujeria and curandismo, right? So just kind of threw two terms at you: brujeria and curandismo. What are they, right? There's a couple ways in which to describe these two Mexican Latino traditions, Latine, if you want to use the E, and to keep it gender neutral. I don't personally use the X. It's a little more difficult to pronounce in Spanish. It doesn't conjugate easily, so I use an E. So Latine. Um, so brujeria. So in the traditional sense, like if you were to go to Mexico or go to like a Latin American neighborhood and like ask somebody like, what is the difference between brujeria and curanderismo? The basic answer they're going to give you is that curanderismo is white magic and brujeria is black magic. I am not a big fan of that particular distinction or description. Um, Especially as somebody who also practices, who has more occult practices, and who's also into some of the like the left hand path stuff. And just from a decolonizing point of view as well, terms white and black magic, not a big fan of it, right? But so the more nuanced terms, the more nuanced definitions we can use. Let me see. Is it possible to slow down slightly on Mexican pronunciations? Struggling to catch some of them. All right. I think I will slow down. Also, I should have mentioned I use they them pronouns, y'all. Um, but I forgot to mention that in the beginning. But I will slow down. Yes, thank you for letting me know. Much appreciate. But so yeah, brujeria and curandismo. So brujeria, what again? Traditional Latin American communities would refer to as black magic, is generally going to be more, let's call it, so brujeria as a term just literally means witchcraft. Like the word witchcraft in Spanish is just brujeria. It does have its own connotation though. Like for myself, I would never call myself a witch. That is just a term that doesn't feel comfortable for me. But I refer to myself as a bruja, absolutely through and through. Um, and so, because the term literally means witchcraft, you will generally see more neo-pagan esque type and styles of magic. You're more likely to get tarot cards, astrology. You might get a mixture of um, Latino pagan traditions. So Mexika, Mayan, and definitely on the more, for lack of a better term, edgy side of things. You'll also get a heavier dose of occultism in brujeria. Um, Brujeria is where you're going to find a lot more influences from ceremonial magic, high magic. You'll find a lot more folks into like Aleister Crowley, into Alex and Maxine Saunders, the Alexandrian traditions. Um, it's where you'll get more Satanists, or at least satanic influence, and is where you'll see more results-based magic happening. Like as you can see in this image, we have some um, doll representations, puppets, if you will, with images and photos, candles, right? So brujeria is more where you're trying to protection magic, vengeful magic, um, money, sex magic, those sorts of things, right? Curanderismo could be more amalgamated to what the West understands as shamanic, and so it's more shamanic in nature. Um, let's see, how about dark versus light? I still wouldn't use necessarily dark magic versus light magic per se, because you know. So it's Latino magic in general, and Santa Muerte specifically. These ideas of, you know, seeking out revenge or hurting others who have hurt you is a bad thing. Those ideas don't exist within Latino magic. Um, I'm not going to say we're necessarily eye for an eye, um, but there's definitely a vein of, to use an Anton LaVey quote, at least to paraphrase, uh, treat others as they treat you. you know, instead of treat others as you would yourself like to be treated. Treat them how they treat you. And so like a lot of Santa Moristas, um, Santa Muerte devotees will do hexes or curses or however you want to call it, on the person who essayed them, on the person who hurt one of their loved ones. And in that regard, I wouldn't consider that dark magic. Um, I don't know if I'd necessarily consider it light either. I just think those dichotomies don't necessarily have a place in this, at least in Brujeria, um, and the cult of la Santa Muerte. Um, they just don't have a place because those are definitely more European concepts. Um, so yeah, so that's definitely that. Brown. Um, bam. So so curanderismo is more shamanic in nature. Uh, Most of its focus is on healing. You'll see a lot of curanderos also get into like Eastern practices, so like yoga, massage, Reiki especially, Reiki and anything chakra work wise. You know, if your curandero is, especially if they're like an American curandero or like a millennial curandero who's a little bit more tapped in internationally, um, we'll definitely be picking up on a lot of that. Um, most curanderismo practices have to do with honoring our ancestors, um, holding space for pain and trauma, um, and driving away um, malignant spirits. So my great grandfather, my maternal great grandfather, was a curandero, and my grandmother has stories of he had this suitcase that had like or this briefcase that had, you know, cards and a bunch of herbs. They're curanderismo on like herbal magic, hand in hand. So like herbs and stones and things that he would set on fire and such. Um, and that he would travel. My family's from Juarez, from so think El Paso, Texas area. Um, and so he would travel into central Mexico and you know into the U.S. and to the Southwest to heal people and to help them, you know, drive out malignant spirits. Um, she even had stories that he would perform exorcisms. A lot of curanderos, while doing a lot of this ancestral magic that ties back predominantly through a lot of Mayan magic, not as much Mexika. Um, Curanderos are also more than likely to be Catholics as well, practicing go to church every Sunday Catholics. Bam, checking the chat. Y'all are chatty bunch. I'm used to doing these lectures for like these like ceremonial magic specific groups where they're just like, you know, they just want to be talked at for 2 hours and then like, you know, questions. I dig this. Y'all are rad. Um, bam. All right, cool. Is it possible to practice both? Um, yes. So there are curanderos um who do brujeria and some brujas who incorporate practices of curanderismo as well. Um, what is with the use of the word cult? So cult here is more used to mean um, the underground bane of the existence of mainstream society, a group of people. But particularly here, it's used in the idea that there. So, I'm like, when you see the word cult brought up in Latin America a lot, particularly, it doesn't necessarily mean like the like you know like the like a particular group, right? Like freaking Jonestown or like they are a specific cult, right? Um, it's more meaning it's more used to mean this underground subversive movement that mainstream society and perhaps even the government officially has denounced. Like the Mexican government has stated that any evidence of or any like iconography of La Santa Muerte, be it a rosary, a tattoo, this that, is evidence of proof that you're part of the cartels, that you're a narco, because it is said that the narcos work with her a lot as well. We're gonna touch on that in a little bit. Um, and the Catholic Church has deemed La Santa Muerte satanic, and that death obsessed, and that pretty much everybody who works with her just wants to kill themselves. And so so that word is generally used to mean like that type of thing, but within the community ourselves, we're kind of like, cool, you want to call us a cult? Sure. you know um we it's because a lot of us again are on the outskirts of society. The way the Catholic Church, especially in such a Catholic country as Mexico, has historically treated LGBTQ plus people. It's kind of a big fu to the church in that regard, although Mexico has made great strides recently in LGBTQ plus rights. Give me one moment. I'm gonna take just gonna take one moment. Sorry about that. My phone was like beeping at me that I was gonna die, so I had to grab my charger. All right. Let's see, where are we at? I'm gonna check the chat. Bam. Yeah, the Catholic Church considers every other religion as a cult. Yeah, pretty much. Um, Bam. All right, Robin, dig it. Death comes to life. All right, cool. Bam. Yeah, so to kind of just wrap that last little bit up, um, Brujeria is gonna be more, for lack of a term, witchy, and curanderismo is gonna be a little bit more shamanic. But yeah, a lot of the curanderos also consider themselves Catholic um, during the day, kind of like if you see a lot of old school hoodoo practitioners were also Christian as well. It's how we keep our traditions alive under colonization. So the next bit is her Spanish origins, her Hispanic origins. Um, well, another little fun fact: there's a joke in the more um, leftist Latino type spaces. Um, the only people who refer to us to refer to Latinos as Hispanics are boomers and narcs, because Hispanic specifically means from Spain, and like, nah, we're indigenous. We're not European. We're not Iberian. um, so, but yeah, so we're not. Just another little hint there, a little thing there. This is a depiction of La Parca by Antonio Garcia Vega. La Parca was known as the Angel of Death. So again, like I mentioned, she was the wife of the Grim Reaper. She was easier to deal with than her husband, Um, and really the big part of it is you can make deals with her, right? Um, like if you were on your deathbed and you know you were like, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. The Grim Reaper could come and would just be like, all right, let's go. And you're like, oh, wait. And it's just like, nope, sorry, boom, let's go, bye. We're done. And next thing you know, you're dead and you're, going to the pearly gates or what have you. Um, Whereas La Parca, when she would come, you could be like, wait. I just, let me get my affairs in order. Let me say goodbye to my wife, my kids, my loved ones, my whatever, right? Um, and she would be more, she would, she would be more likely to grant you this so long as you do something for her while you were still kicking. And so while you were saying your goodbyes to your husband, your partner, your loved ones, your friends, you would also have to, you know, do whatever she asked, whatever that might be. That could be a spiritual thing, that could be a physical thing, an offering of sorts. Um, so these Spanish origins are where you get La Muerte's robes, her scythe, and her scales. Um, it's also again how one of the main ways in which you work with her, which is making deals, right? Um, the robes all have different colors with different meanings, which we will get into. Um, and then her scales, like the globe from her indigenous origins, are also meant to show her power over life and death and those sorts of things. Um, yeah. So her, I guess you could tell how much how much stock I put into her Spanish origins by that. How quickly we covered that. Um, the Cult de la Muerte has gone through um several updates, several transitions and such. And so we're going to talk a little bit about them. Obviously, like I mentioned before, like here on the left, this is a depiction of Mitakasuat by Corazon Mexika. Definitely recommend checking them out. His artwork is absolutely beautiful. He's also got a Mexica indigenous oriented tarot deck. It's like 40 or 60 bucks on Etsy, but oh my gods. If you're into if you're indigenous, if you're Mexican, if you're Latino, I want to tap into a lot of that. If you want to support indigenous Latino artists, want to tap into the traditions of the land that you're on. If you are here on Turtle Island, I definitely recommend checking out this tarot deck. It is phenomenal. I'll turn on the camera later and show it off a little bit. Um, so she obviously started as Mintika Suwat, right? And the during the Mexika times, during times of the Mexika Empire. Um, Legend then says that she kind of went underground during colonization, right? But as far back as the 18th century, we have, which as the Latinos, we didn't exist 600 years ago. So the fact that we have something from the 18th century about La Muerte, um, I think says a lot. How quickly she was willing to come back up and how long she's been around still. I mean, Latinos didn't exist 600 years ago. We're colonized indigenous people. Our whole culture is a mixture of colonization and indigenous tradition. So, yeah. But as far back as the 18th century, uh, Spanish Catholic records were jotting down stories of women praying to a skeletal figure robed in red to bring back their lovers. So her red robe is, as far as the historical record is concerned, and in her modern rendition, the oldest that we have. Um, And again, love magic, right? Bringing back, long lost lovers, bringing back husbands who are cheating, um, or who were leaving. Um, that's back in the colonial times. People were just like, La Muerte, hell, like desperate. Like we need, especially considering those times, your man leaves, you know, that sort of patriarchal society was you were screwed. So, that sort of desperate need for stability and home and love. She was like, I got you, Boo. There are some records, again from the colonial period, that mention men seeing a vision of her in the middle of the night, specifically to scare them back to their families. So I feel like we have both sides of that, right? The women praying to her to bring back long lost lovers, and um, men recording that, seeing the skeletal figure, just utterly frightening them, and like some of the records are like frightening them into sobriety specifically. So checking chat, bam. There's an intro to curandismo on course coursera.org. That's cool. The artist's name um, for is a Corazon Mexica, is I believe the handle that you can generally find him under. Because my tarot box, that's what it says as well. Although his name is Chicome. But if you just look up this little at the very bottom right here, Corazon Mexica, this red little line underneath on the left, the indigenous picture, it's right where the guy's depicted with his heart being torn out on the ground. Just look that up. That's what I looked up to find his work. um and then, is she tied to how about sex magic? Is she tied to that? um um Bam. She is tied to some sex magic. The sex is a little tricky with her. We'll talk about that though. There's always been a reading. But yeah, we'll talk about her and sex magic, because some say yes, some say no. Um, there's another record log saying that it was particularly indigenous folks who were working with her for wealth and good fortune. Um, and again, when you're at the bottom of a 42 tier caste system, if you think the caste system of India is pretty harsh, with like the whole like the untouchables at the bottom and everything, look up what the Spanish did in Latin America and in the Caribbean. Oh my God. Like, yeah, 42 different levels, caste levels, and ways that they were better than us. Like, oh my God. Um, so indigenous folks were working with her for for wealth and good fortune. She then goes underground a bit again. We don't really see anything more after the colonial period. We don't see anything during revolutionary times and such. Bam. Um, it is said by some, and I go back and forth on this explanation, but La Catrina, right? That famous image of the skeletal woman with the big old fancy hat. Um, that was La Muerte popping up again to guide our society, guide our peoples. La Catrina was originally a political cartoon drawn by Jose Guadalupe Posada, and was only from the shoulders up. If you've ever seen that classic, like that black and white sketch, right, where it's just the shoulders up, that is the original one by Posada. and was meant to be a commentary on capitalism and Mexico, the Mexican government's, and thus mainstream society's push for Europeanization and wealth collecting. The whole point of La Catrina originally was um, he was telling people, you know, you can, because if you look at her style, like that hat and everything, it's a French hat. Um, you could dress as European as you want, but your vessels, your bones, they're still indigenous. They're still Mexika, and that's not going to change no matter how much what you wear. Um, or you try to whiten your line, which was definitely a thing. Your bones through and through are still Mexica, are still indigenous. And that's kind of what she started out with. It wasn't until Diego Rivera, the husband of Frida Kahlo, which, by the way, I love that that's how we say it now. I remember when like people we used to be like, oh yeah, Frida Kahlo, the wife of Diego Rivera, but now we're like, no, Diego Rivera, the husband of Frida Kahlo, because Kahlo's the more well-known one now, and I freaking love that. That is just that is juicy. Oh man, because that guy was a piece of work. Good gods. He did this picture here, and this one in the center. That was the first time La Catrina was ever given a full body depiction. He's the one that gave her that classic, rattlesnake scarf, which was also it's a rattlesnake, which are common in the deserts of Mexico, but with the way it's feathered like that, it's also meant to represent Quetzalcoatl, or in the Mayan traditions, Cuculacan, the feathered serpent, right? You then see a depiction of himself here holding La Catrina's hand, and then his wife Frida Kahlo, again Frida Kahlo back there, holding the little yin and yang, light and dark, balance, that sort of stuff. And the whole painting is called Sueño de un tarde dominical en la Alameda Central, otherwise known as A Dream on a Sleepy Sunday in Alameda Central. It depicts a parade of political activists, friends, socialites, and people in Rivera's life, all walking down this like essentially sort of Dia de Muertos-esque parade, down Alameda Central, in Mexico City. The person here next to Frida Kahlo behind Rivera is some, I forget who that's supposed to be, but it's there's I think Tolstoy's back there. Kahlo was a proud and out communist, and so there's some of those figures back there, and in the whole image as well. But yeah, that's where we get the first depiction of it. And what La Catrina became, originally was a commentary, right? Like you could dress up, European, but you're still indigenous. She became a symbol of resistance, a symbol of fighting back against colonization, against Europeanization. She became um she became a symbol for fighting back. Yeah. um and that sort of refusal to be buried by the colonizers, by the colonizers' religion, um and that holding true to your indigeneity, um was such a big part in working with La Muerte herself, um because again, we're keeping on our indigenous traditions to this day. Um, Others will say that La Catrina was not La Muerte popping up as far as Posada was concerned. Um, the original artist for La Catrina, Jose Posada, he said he did draw inspiration for her. The reason he chose, a feminine Lady Death was he based La Catrina off Mitica Suat. But that, others will, so that gives credence to that is La Muerte is still continuing on, while others are just like, he maybe had based it, but that doesn't mean that's her. We don't use La Catrina in that sort of religious sense, that sort of spiritual sense per se. Although that is beginning to change, as La Catrina has become more tied to Dia de Muertos itself and has become an icon of that. And as well as, like, honestly, that movie I mentioned earlier, Book of Life, their depiction of La Catrina that has Salma Hayek doing the voice for her is, go to a Dia de Muertos parade, you're gonna see the Book of Life Catrina somewhere. It is like impossible to not. Like, it is, she's iconic. And you're starting to see Catrina imagery pop up on Santa Muerte altars now as well. Right. And so that would then give way to the modern depiction of La Santa Muerte, with the unveiling of her shrine in 2001 in Mexico City, by a woman affectionately known as Dona Queta, in the barrio, the neighborhood of Tepito, which is one of the roughest neighborhoods in Mexico City. And Mexico City is known as one of the roughest cities in the world. So La Muerte definitely, she's from the barrio. So we are now firmly in modern day. Is there what does her red robes mean? We're gonna talk about that. I have a whole thing on the robe colors. But long story short, love magic. But does anybody else have any other questions right now before we get into the modern day stuff? I'll drink some water while I wait. All right. So notable persons. This is Dona Queta over here on the left. She passed away either just before or just after COVID hit. I forget exactly off the top of my head. She, oh, my notes are still in the present tense for her. I gotta fix those. But she, according to her, she learned about La Muerte from her mother, who learned about it from her mother, who learned about it from her mother, who learned about it from her mother, type of thing. At the very least, her great grandmother also, like all the way back to her great grandmother, worked with Santa Muerte and passed the practice down to the daughters. Historically, the cult of La Santa Muerte has always been more feminine heavy, more femme heavy. But so Halloween 2001, October 31st, right before, which in some tradition, by some calendar markers, is also considered the first evening of the Dia de Muertos celebrations. That's mostly amongst the Mayan communities, but among some of the more just Mexican communities as well. Halloween 2001, she moved her shrine from her living room onto the sidewalk of Tepito. So she had the shrine in her living room right by the door. So going in, going out, La Muerte was, right there. She watched your back as you left, the house, and she greeted you as you came home. It's a very common practice you'll see with her. And Dona Queta would make food from her kitchen and sell it on the street right outside her house. And so she had her house open all the time to let the smoke out and the smells to filter into the streets to, entice hungry customers, right? And people would see the statue, the shrine to La Muerte, and consistently ask if they could come in and pay their respects. And she was always down for it. She was like, "All right, come on in. That's cool." Well, just before Halloween 2001, her son was arrested on some bunk charges and was facing a lot of jail time for, according to her and her family, stuff that was essentially no basis in reality, right? And so the lawyers were saying it doesn't look like it's going to amount to anything if they try to fight it. The court system looked like it was just ready to strike him down. And so she was desperate. So she prayed to La Muerte, please, please bring my son home. Don't let him spend the rest of his days locked up in jail for a crime he did not commit. So according to her, she specifically said, if he is innocent, please let him come home, right? Because again, death takes us all. Death is the ultimate judge, right? So death would know. You can't hide that. You can't lie to death. And sure enough, a couple days before Halloween, she's praying and praying, and in the door walks her son, a free man. So, as a thank you to La Muerte for bringing her son home, she put the shrine out on the street so others could adore her and leave offerings and such. From this point on, every year she held an annual Dia de Muertos celebration at her house, where devotees would come and bring statues to be blessed, and mariachis and vendors and all sorts of stuff. It was a whole shebang. I don't know if it's still happening post COVID, but it was absolutely amazing. There's videos on it if you ever get a chance. If you literally type in "Dona Queta Tepito Santa Muerte Mass," something along those lines, it'll come up on YouTube. Every month she would host rosary services. So her shrine she eventually would put it behind glass, so it could be shielded from the elements. And people would, just pack around, and whoever was leading the rosary, which was, again, she considered herself Catholic, would put the hand on the glass on the altar, right? And then everyone else would link arms and be connected to the shrine. And they would all, say prayers for La Muerte. They would sing her songs and all sorts of stuff. It was here Dona Queta single-handedly launched the modern movement. If you have heard of La Santa Muerte, but you have no idea who Dona Queta is, you still owe Dona Queta everything. If it wasn't for her, we don't really know if the cult of Santa Muerte would have stayed underground. Dona Queta really brought it to light. As time went on, both her son ended up, who she prayed to, have returned and get out of jail, was eventually gunned down just outside the home. To which, Dona Queta responded with lots of, just devoting even more to La Muerte to, help his soul pass to a peaceful afterlife. Her husband, both her and her husband have passed from old age and illness. But as far as I know, as far as I'm aware, the Pito's kind of considered the Mecca of La Muerte's community. I'm going to mention a couple others who are not shown here. There's the Vargas family. Jonathan Vargas, aka Comandante Patera. He founded the Santa Muerte International Temple in Tutulecan. in Titilian, and checking this. And they created the largest Santa Muerte statue in the world at 75 feet high. If you ever Googled La Santa Muerte and you see this like very boxy, giant, black robed Grim Reaper esque thing in Mexico, that was Comandante Patera who built that. And then there's his mother, Enriqueta Vargas, who became a believer after her Comandante passed away in 2008. She would spread the Santa Muerte's international temple all across Mexico. The media nicknamed her Death's Evangelist. She definitely pulled a lot from like from that sort of like a megachurch Baptist style of preaching. She has since passed away in 2018 from cancer. But then her daughter, Cristel, has taken over and continues to keep up the giant statue that her brother built and continue her mother's mission. Give me 1 second. Bam. A rat. Sorry about that. Next up, and one of the ones that is depicted here, is Areli Vasquez. This amazing trans woman goddess was one of my introductions into La Muerte. She, again, so trans woman, immigrant. According to her, La Muerte saved her life. She came over from Mexico and found her way to New York, specifically in Queens, because she couldn't transition safely in Mexico. Like the trans murders in Latin America are absolutely obscene if you think they're bad here in the States. So she came, so she realized she was like, I need to be able to be who I am. I need to be able to just live authentically, right? And so her so she prayed to La Muerte and was like, please let me get to the United States safely and let me start becoming the woman that I am, and I will give you everything pretty much. She made it to Queens safely, and she began transitioning. She met a guy. They fell in love, and as far as I know, they are still absolutely enamored and heels over head for each other. So every year to mark the anniversary of the beginning of her transition, she throws a big old party for La Santa Muerte. We're talking like she rents out halls and covers them in shrines, hires mariachis, caterers, everything. Practitioners come from all over to celebrate with her. And it is a hub for the queer Latina Santa Muerte devotee space. Like, check out some of the videos online. It is, I just get so happy. I'm always just like, oh my God, this is beautiful. This is perfect. This is everything I want it to be. And she's one of the main people continuing to propagate La Muerte and her word here in the US, specifically from a authentic Latina point of view. There are a couple other more well-known Santa Muerte teachers, but they're not Latina. So Adeli Vasquez is absolutely phenomenal. And one day I will go to one of your parties. I swear. I need to go to the East Coast anyways. Um, Another person is David Romo Guillen. He founded the Iglesia Católica Tradicionalista, or the traditional Catholic Church. Um, as an international Mexican and USA based church in the year of 2000. Um, it became the first ever government recognized Santa Muerte Church, um, and it actually held an official status for 10 years, just under 10 years, until 2009, when the Mexican state, um, in response to some cartel murders, started destroying Santa Muerte shrines that were built along the borders that migrants were essentially using as like prayer bases. The Mexican government destroyed over 80 of these shrines. Not 80. I read that wrong. 30 of these Santa Muerte shrines along the U.S.-Mexican border. And so Guillen declared a holy war against the Mexican government, which obviously did not end well for him, because you don't declare a holy war against a state government. He was eventually arrested and charged with kidnapping, blackmail, which all tie back to this holy war. He was also responsible for, if you ever see the Santa Muertes that have like a half human face and it's always this very Eurocentric looking white girl, that was him as well. And so while he definitely was a shoddy person, the fact that his church was able to gain some sort of official recognition has given hope to a lot of Santa Moristas, that our practice could eventually be recognized and appreciated, and we no longer have to hide. Because again, like I mentioned, the Mexican government still considers any sort of Santa Muerte symbols, iconography, as evidence of being in the cartels, and that is it counts as probable cause. So essentially, but we keep going. We're fighting. We're trying. The last person I want to mention is a guy named Dr. Andrew W. Chestnut, who wrote the book Devoted to Death. He's the main resource for Santa Muerte's material available in English. He's the main non-Latine, who's kind of in the space. He was a Catholic priest that started just digging into La Muerte, trying to figure out what this phenomenon is going on. He has since left the church and is now a Santa Muerte devotee, and he runs like a Facebook group and everything. And he's just still going. He's pretty rad. So I know I'm running late. I need to start just cutting these classes into two tech traditionally from here on out. We're gonna go over a system of magic. I'm not gonna try to speed through it per se, but I'm going to slow down with. I'm gonna slow down with the side stories. If you have any questions, we'll continue on. If you have any questions, let me know. But so her original, so her system of magic is heavily influenced by her robe colors, which a lot of those come from Santeria. But one thing to know is that her Latina magic's, Brujeria's color system is different than Western color magic. While some are the same, like red is for love, black is for protection, black here is also revenge, white is for purity, but it's also a catch-all. Other ones that have been added in and that are slightly different are blue here is for knowledge, yellow is for healing or success, but if you're doing healing magic, you use yellow. Some modern practitioners say purple is for healing now. I think a lot of that's the Western influence. Traditionally, purple is for when you're doing sort of like magic work, think astral, divination, that sort of stuff. Green is for legal magic. She has a whole system of legal court system based magic. Gold is for money. Pink is for romance, some more emotional and sexual red. Um, and then you start getting to the hair splitting, like amber's for overcoming addiction. Silver is for moon magic. Bone or brown in general is for necromancy, also ancestral work. And then the seven powers, the seven colors, is a catch-all as well. So white or the seven powers is a catch-all. Yes, field trips. So when you if you start working with her, if you're looking into her, and you have a background in traditional Western color magic, please check that Western bias at the door and make sure you have your Latina Brujeria chart right there with you. I have a file. I'll post it in the chat. It's like a little image. It's a list of color magic for Brujeria. So yeah, I work with the blue one a lot for knowledge. She helped me get a degree. It was awesome. These are some tools of the trade. So the way you work with her, all you really technically need to work with her is to be one of the people she protects. So a woman, femme, queer, and out people on the, you work with death or work at night or a sex worker, or you're just on the outskirts of society. Pretty much if you're a cishet, white, rich male who's like into Hootie and the Blowfish and like Dave Matthews Band and normie stuff, that's probably the one demographic she doesn't actually really care about too much. I don't know why Hootie came up, but yeah, I just don't like them, I guess. But all you really need is to be one of those people, which is a lot of us. You don't technically need to be Latino to work with her. Her system is not closed, but we're gonna get into that. But it's not necessarily open either per se. But you just need to be one of those people. Some iconography of her, be that a candle or a statue. You can print out a picture of her. You could, like one of my friends who takes care of her mother, who can't have an altar because her mom would just start praying at her to find God every single day. She keeps a little owl statue thing that she found at Dollar Tree. You just need something that represents her, skull of some sort, like like I have some Dia de Muertos sugar skull salt shakers that my cousin bought me from the dollar store. Like you can put one of those on, a little thing of water. I would recommend generally for something small, shot glass of water, and somewhere to put your offerings. That's it. You don't really need much, but the tools of her trade are vast. And again, a lot of that comes from the Santeria influence, which is where you get a lot of the perfumes and the aerosol sprays and the soaps and all that kind of jazz. The Santeria influence is also all the extra colors. Her traditional system, if you talk to a Santa Marista purist, red, black, and white, and that's it. There's no blue, there's no da-da-da. Red is all love, sex magic. Some will even use so your love and sex magic, that kind of stuff. Anything personal endeavors, anything passionate. And then black, revenge, protection, war, what have you. And then white, everything else. The size and materials don't necessarily matter. The main thing you want to make sure is if you do get a statue or you create your own, is that you charge it. The wooden and resin ones that you can find at stores will generally, if you look at the bottom, will have like, especially like, it's kind of funny, some of the ones made in China will have like little Chinese money coins in the bottom with some like grains of rice and this and that. Some of the ones made in Mexico, you'll see pesos. some Mexican money, right? Um, you want to make sure that it's charged of some sort. If there is no resin at the bottom or on the back, you want to consecrate it with some Santa Muerte oil. I would generally cleanse it with Florida water beforehand, and then put some Santa Muerte oil that can be purchased at a Botanica or Disco Azteca or something along those lines. And then, or you can get the Santa Muerte aerosol spray can, like what's right over here, and say a prayer over it and make an offering. The statues come in various different forms. There's standing, which is the best for beginners, because she's fast acting. She's, just kind of ready to go, right? There's Santa Muerte enthroned, right? She's sitting on a throne. That is her at her most powerful. It's very best, that the enthroned statue is best for devotional work. I think very much that sort of like, king on a throne and, a peasant kissing the feet type thing. Like, yeah. Then there's the open-armed one, which was made famous by Comandante Pantera. That one is best. He created that one specifically for a lot of the marginalized groups who were essentially, and a lot of the indigenous people who the Mexican government was actively still like screwing over, and removing them from their lands and such. And so it's like, again, that open arms, kind of like, I accept you, I love you, I'm here for you. As well. Let me see. Actually, wait, anyone catch them all? Well, bomb. Thank you, Morgan, for putting those in there. And again, I will post those in the event. There's also Santa Muerte who's pregnant. That is really good for anyone who wants to like a fresh start or start a new business or get pregnant, or bring an idea into fruition, make your dream a reality kind of thing. She's sometimes depicted with children at her side. That is best for generally for parents who are asking, or guardians who are asking for protection for their children. There's also one with her riding a horse, which is best for swift and harsh action against enemies. That is, Santa Muerte ready for war. There's the doble cara, the double face. So again, that's that half human, half skull. Generally, predominantly used by men trying to seek romantic or sexual partners. And then there is the bride, La Muerte, who's generally looking more for committed love, not just hookups, like the doble cara. And then the last two ones are her depicted as an angel. So it's the guardian angel's really good protection one. And then the indigenous one, sometimes known as La Azteca, that is best for brujeria, divination, herbal healing, and or when using ethnogens. So you want to do anything within the very witchy world. The indigenous one is really good. I will say particularly, unless you are indigenous or mestizo or like some form of Latino, I would not use the indigenous one, as that is very much, indigenous. I would just be a little careful on that particular one. So you can kind of see there's lots of different variations for her. The most common one, again, is the standing one. And if you're starting out, sometimes, the one that pops out to you, the one that calls, to use a cliche, that's the one that might, kind of help you, tell you what she's wanting, what she's needing, trying to help you. Is she like a triple goddess? No, she is not. Mintecasuat and Santa Muerte is her own kind of thing. The Mexika pantheon does have a triple goddess aspect with some of the lunar goddesses, but she's not inherently lunar. So she doesn't have like a sort of maiden mother crone type of fashion. Some of the other tools you can use when working with her are incense, obviously. So frankincense and myrrh, the classic Catholic right? If you ever grew up going to a Catholic church, you know that combo smell. Frankincense is a good cleansing, space cleansing, kind of similar to like what you could use non-white sage for, or but it specifically cleanses your space of anything you do not want and allows everything you do want to stay in your space. Myrrh has been historically always used for necromancy. So again, raising of the dead. We're working with the death deity here. Copal, which was sacred to the Mayas, and for ancestral work. And then there are some Santa Muerte specific ones. You'll see these branded ones that are just like Santa Muerte incense. Some of them will come in certain colors, which will denote to her certain robe colors and her magical powers. And some will just be, all black with a single scent kind of thing. That are less specific to the type of working. So you'll see those varieties. The aerosol sprays are kind of cool because again, those come from Santeria, which is sympathetic magic. Like equals like, right? Spell costs for roses. You ain't got roses, but you got a rose aerosol spray. Cool, boom, dude, you're good. That is so Santeria hoodoo, and has been trying to be incorporated into Brujeria. Perfumes, oils, soaps, and as well are also big ways to work with her. One of the way I devoted myself to her was I got a Santa Muerte soap, and I went to my local river, a river that had a lot of significance and meaning to me, and I washed myself with the soap and kind of essentially baptized myself to her. You can also use like the oils and sense like keep her protection stuff. There's like some like foot powder stuff that you can put in your shoes, so every step you take you're protected by her. We get intricate with it. It's actually pretty fun. But it's not like hot foot powder. It's protection stuff for you, not right. Then there's a tarot deck. So the tarot decks are a thing. The most common one you will see is the Book of the Dead, La Santa Muerte Tarot, by some Italian dude, and the image on the cover is Santa Muerte pregnant. I am particularly not a fan of that deck because the artwork is not Latina, the creator is not Latina. Santa Muerte is on like 2 or 3 cards maybe, and the rest are just, oh look, we put a skeleton, we have a skeleton with a sombrero on, that means it's Day of the Dead. I have opinions on it. The one I generally recommend is the Tarot de la Santa Muerte, the one depicted here in the center. As you can see, she's on almost every card. If you know her robe colors, or if you know tarot but don't know her robe colors, you can look at like, okay, so the Fool, right? What is the symbolism of the Fool? You can kind of take that and apply that to her blue robe, and there, boom, you have an idea of what her blue robe is like, right? So it's a really good learning deck and how to work with her. My one gripe with this deck is the colorism is coming through so hard. There's like not a single brown person in this entire deck. They're all blonde hair, blue eyed, white skinned as heck. They and I swear the artist read and watched way too much heavy metal because every guy is ripped and buff, and I don't think the artist has ever seen a woman naked in his life, because it is just yeah, just heavy metal like the 80s movie all throughout. So that's my one gripes with that deck. But overall, I think it is a superior deck to the Book of the Dead one. There's also now, so the Book of the Dead one also has that Oracle deck to go with it that makes like a Santa Muerte Ouija board. I haven't used that. Again, I don't, it doesn't, I don't connect to it with La Muerte, but some devotees do, and some Latino devotees do. So your mileage may vary, just something to be aware of. There's also a Santa Muerte Lenormand deck out now, made by a 9/11 survivor, also not Latino. So your mileage may vary as well. I haven't used it yet, so they're at least worth checking out, you know. But at least he's a devotee actively, whereas the other one, the Italian one, that guy's not. So at least the Santa Muerte Lenormand, he's a devotee. So that is definitely rad. Um, there's also ways in which you work with her. So there's two main traditional ways you use all of these things, right? There is prayers like novenas, which are 9-day prayers. A lot of them are very Catholic in origin. You generally pray to the Abrahamic God, ask him permission to work with La Muerte, um, and then go from there. Um, or there's like, you could say a rosary. So there's like this rosaries instead of a cross, you have La Santa Muerte attached to the bottom. Um, again, the Santa Muerte rosaries will sound like a traditional rosary, but instead of the mysteries of Mary, it's there are mysteries of La Muerte kind of included. You can find that online. Um, there is one more non-Catholic Santa Muerte rosary that I do like, by this woman Tracy Rollins. It's the one good thing to come out of her book. It's the Santa Muerte book by Weiser. If you can find that rosary online, it's a good rosary. Although I definitely recommend writing your own as you grow and connect with her. That book, though, Tracy Rollins, if you're doing research, do not go for that book. She actively says the words, "I'm from New Mexico. I grew up around Mexicans, therefore I can speak on their culture." No, you can't. So it gets worse. So I'm not going to rant about it right now, but it's pretty. It's not a good book. There's so much better ones, and I'll have recommendations at the end. And then the other ways you work with her are by making deals. So again, hey, La Muerte, I need, I'm struggling in this class. Can you please help me, pass this class? Or can you help me? I'm broke. I need some cash to let's do that. I'm broke and I need money for food. Can you please help me come into some money? If you help me make some money, I will say your rosary on the full moon for the next 3 full moons. I just kind of chose 3. There's not a particular reason. She will then, so the one time I did a prayer like this, one of the times I did a prayer like this, asking her for money, I put some pennies and some dollar bills on the bottom of her statue. So I offered her that cash right there, said I needed something. Literally 3 days later, my boss at this cantina that I worked at, the guy who owned the property, not my actual boss, he was like, "Hey, I just want to say I love all the work you're doing. I see how hard you're busting your ass. Here, just a little something." Hands me a bill in my hand. It looks like a 5. I say, "Thank you, cool." I put it in my server booklet, and I'm running around, right? Before he leaves, he's like, "Hey, did you take a look at that what I gave you?" I was like, "Oh yeah, thanks for the tip." He's like, No, take a look." I opened up my server booklet. He handed me $100 bill. And I was just like, sweet. I got food that night. I ate for the first time that day. Ugh. So, right, you make deals, right? And so because she did that for me, um, I returned the favor. I refreshed her altar. I said her prayers. I had actually scheduled the first time I would ever do this class for her. So $100, man. It's the reason why I'm here tonight. So those are the 2 traditional ways in which you work with her. But for me, and I found other devotees, um, that's not how we like to work. I am not a results-based magic person. I don't do money spells or moon water for protection or sigils for manifestation. I don't do manifestation work. I don't do sigils for acquiring this or that. That's just not how I do my magic. I'm a theurgist through and through. If you're familiar with the Eastern systems, bhakti, yoga style of work, right? So how do I work with an energy, a spirit, a goddess whose entire system is built based around result-based magic? And so there are those of us who are starting to, we do more devotional work. We were called devotees after all, right? That's, devotee a la Santa Muerte. That is like how most people refer to us. And so for me, I keep up my altar. I teach these classes. I've written rituals for her. I have taken some traditional ceremonial magic and thelemic rituals and have made them more accommodated to her and to indigenous magic. Um, and so, yeah, so it's like that's kind of how, so that is starting to become a thing, but it's not as common. She's traditionally a results based magical system. Offerings when you are doing these results based magic stuff could be things like tattoos. Tattoos are a very common offering for her. I have one for her after she helped me get my associate's degree. She helped me pass a algebra 2 class because me and math not good friends. Flowers, like I mentioned, sambasuchi, their scent is said to attract the dead. Roses are another one of her favorites. Roses are a good symbol for her as well. She also really likes apples, particularly. Um, and then any of your vices, any of your favorite foods. So both tobacco and marijuana are sacred plants. Cannabis and tobacco are sacred plants to her. So if you want to offer, well, if you partake of either of those two things, you could leave a nug for her. You could leave some loose leaf tobacco, leave a cigarette out. You can even, when you pack your bowl, you take your rip, blow some smoke over her statue, blow some smoke over her altar, give her some, share it with her, right? It's the same thing with a cigarette. If you don't do either of those two things, even though tobacco and cannabis are secret plants to her, if you don't partake of those two things, don't offer those. You only offer things to her that are like, she's your friend, right? She's your compadre, she's your cuñada, she's your homie. You're not going to give your best friend something that you actively despise as a way to pawn it off on them, right? Um, so if you don't partake of those things, don't offer because they mean nothing to you, right? You want to offer something from the heart, and so like tequila and any agave based spirit. Agave is another sacred plant of hers. So when I offer tequila, I will pour a shot glass for her. I will then dip my finger in the shot glass and I will run it over her teeth of her statues to give her some to share. Um, and then I will take my shot with her, right? I'll take my own shot. And after doing that offering, you could also offer her food, um, any of your favorite food. I mean, like, I you don't have to offer her Mexican food just because she's Mexican. If your favorite dish is meatloaf and you make some, cut off a tiny piece, put it on a little plate and leave it on the altar. Just don't let it rot. You don't ever let anything rot on her altar. And trust me, things will rot quickly. With all of these offerings, such as food and drinks, do not ever partake of the what you have left as an offering to her. That is incredibly bad luck. That is incredibly it is essentially death has consumed this thing. You are then inviting death upon yourself by taking it. It's all of its, the life force, it's all gone. It's nothing but just empty husk. You will make yourself sick if you try to consume what you have given to her. And just so do not dispose of it however you see fit. Some on the more extreme Santa Muerte devotees say that anything you offer her, you need to then put into a baggie and bury in a cemetery. I just throw mine in the trash. Like, talk to her, see what she says is like, an appropriate way for you. Um, Everything with her is very, however your relationship is with her. Um, but yeah, it's you don't ever want to consume anything you've given her. Um, if you so certain offerings can have certain meanings. A lot of that is going to be fairly basic herbal magic. I mean, I feel like a lot of Cunningham's attributions in his book on herbal magic would work for La Muerte. For the most part, honey is sweet energy and kindness. Garlic fuels her skin, helps remove negative energy. Juniper energizes the body and mind. Mint removes anxiety. Mugwort would help with lucid dreaming and magic, so those sorts of things. Um, so as you're building your altar, you want to make sure the colored cloth, you always want a cloth down. You don't want to just bare on the surface, on the shelf or on the case, right? You want to make sure there's the colored cloth down, and that color is going to match whatever your intention is. Especially as a beginner, I recommend either white, black, or blue. White again is purity, to catch all. Black, protection. It's a good just baseline. Or blue for knowledge, growth, right? So you want to nurture that knowledge, that relationship with her. Or you could also do purple for magic. You want to build this magical relationship with this magical energy, this goddess. So I would recommend, honestly, I recommend blue or purple. But if we're being traditionalists about white or black, the minimum requirements again are just some sort of icon of her and something of water. You always want a little bit of water with her. Some altars can be grand, and you'll see like shot glasses and this and that and all the stuff, like whole bottles of whatever, plates of food. Your altar does not need to be that extensive. Do not push your boundaries on how trying to make something grand for her because you want to show your respect that you cannot keep up. I made that mistake. I made my altar so big because I wanted every color, I wanted everything, I wanted to just really devote myself fully, and it was too much for me. My neurodivergent ass could not keep up with keeping everything fresh all the time and replaced and remembering to do all the things that I promised. I messed up to the point where she went silent on me for about a year. But like, I kept working on it, right? She's back with me now. So you really want to make sure you keep it up, because while some folks will say, if you break your promise to La Muerte, she's going to, she'll get you or your loved ones. That's definitely a lot more fear tactics coming from the Catholic Church. She might just go dark on you. She's not going to fulfill your promises. She's not going to do your quests, and your devotion will be just kind of thrown aside, right? She's going to look at you like, yeah, sure, you don't mean it, right? Insincerity. You can only have so many. You only have spoons for an insincere friend for so long, right? You're gonna say something. Keep your word. You're gonna keep up your altars. So this is not. If you're the type of witch whose altar gets dusty all the time, she's not. You might want to definitely make sure you double check how you work with her. That you don't let that bleed into your work with her there. I'm like, I know I'm starting to go over, but I got just a little bit more. The way you work with her will change as you grow. Some say that her relationship style is very loving, almost like a partner, like a spouse, like a lover, very intimate, very just intense. I know, when I won her, when I won my favor with her again, my relationship with her was very, very intimate like that. Just like spent a year just trying to essentially make it up to her and show my love for her, and it definitely, it was very, very intimate like that. Others, she comes across very motherly, very maternal, and others, she comes across very much. She's referred to sometimes as la patrona, the boss lady. This is sometimes referred to also as the godmother, right? Very stern, strict, tough love, that sort of thing. And so each way in which you work with her, the way you work with her will change and grow, as you deepen your connection with her. And that also might change on the way you work with her, right? Sometimes she pops up for people like, and hey, I got you, right? Like, she doesn't need an altar per se. Maybe she would like one, but doesn't, it's not required. She's not asking you to do offerings. She just wants to let you know, hey, I got your back. I'm here. You're good. If you need anything, let me know. And just kind of hanging out, right? Um, like she's the one on your spirit team who's just kind of like kicking it in the back seat, not on her phone, just like let me know if you need anything, kind of thing, right? Um, then there's others who are like, they'll work with her, once or a couple of times, right? They'll reach out to her, be like, hey, I really need this. You'll do the thing. She'll do the thing. You give her what you promised, and then you're good. Or she'll reach out to you and be like, hey, you need to go over there. You need to do this thing. Come on now. Like I've been trying to contact you. Do the thing. Cool. You did the thing. Give me my thing. Sweet. You're out where you're where you need to go now. Deuces. Right? So we'll show up in that way. And then there's others like myself who she's like, I'm your main bitch. I'm your love. I'm your life. I am everything, and you are gonna do everything for me. You're gonna tattoo myself on your skin. You're gonna wear me around your neck, and this is like right. Um, that is how she's gonna connect, right? You are a devotee for life, and sometimes these will also change. You might, be a serious devotee, and then as your practice changes, as you change and your needs change, and as her needs change, as this world continues to grow more accustomed to her, um, that, there's this sort of like a very intense, full throttle relationship might dwindle down to just kind of like an I got you kind of situation. Um, so it'll vary. And a lot of that is really just study her system, learn from check your sources and stuff, and don't confuse reading a book with your own prayer to her, your own devotion, your own meditation work with her. Like with La Muerte especially, UPG, unverified personal gnosis, like your own, like what she tells you is incredibly important. um with that though, there are some like pitfalls you want to make sure you don't fall into, i.e. if you're not Latina, you don't want to fall into cultural misappropriation. So this is the my closing bits for this. We've got some of her color magic. We know what her robes look like, what they mean, some tools on how to work with her, how to build our altars, how she might kind of come up with us, right? But how can we do all of this if we're not Latino, if we're not, for lack of a term, are you a white person who wants to work with a brown goddess? How can we do that without, coming across like like a racist, right? We don't want to be that well-meaning white lady with, with dreads who's like still trying to say that she's like, totally fine, but is actually kind of still being problematic, or like the Karen who thinks, that she's going to correct you on your pronunciation, but is, like, what can we do, right? To not come across as racist or problematic if you are not Latino. One of the ways is to study and learn her system from Latina sources, right? Make sure if you're learning about Latino systems, and this goes for anything, if you're learning about a Hindu system, learn from somebody who's Hindu. If you're learning about, Arabic systems, learn from somebody who's Arabic. You learn, indigenous, like even like certain indigenous, like I can't, while I am Latino indigenous, I can't speak on the white sage, spirit animal stuff, because I am not that type of indigenous. That is not my place. I cannot, right? So make sure you are definitely getting your sources from the people, from the culture that it comes from. That is so important. And that is doing that alone will really keep you safe from not venturing into cultural misappropriation. I use the term misappropriation because I think the common term cultural appropriation in and of itself, cultural appropriation is not a bad thing. Like in the Western world, we've appropriated Arabic numbers that we don't hurt anybody by using the number system that we use, right? That we have appropriated that into this, right? That's not necessarily inherently bad, but culturally misappropriating, misusing it, removing it out of its context, that's when things go wrong, right? Um, and one of the biggest ways that happens is when these well-meaning white folks try to tell you that you can work with La Muerte in ways that's not traditional to her system. She has a system that developed in Mexico in a specific form, in a specific Catholic way, for a reason, right? Historically, through colonization, through all of it. This is how she is chosen to represent herself. We need to respect that, and we need to respect the people who's, who helped really codify the system, right? So don't go around changing it. That author Tracy Rollins, in her book, she says that you can work with La Santa Muerte by calling on the Wiccan quarters, using Norse runes, and adding a dash of chaos magic into it. Like, no, that's not. She has a system. We're not. We don't need to change that. It works because it works, and because it comes from her people and her, her land. So don't go around trying to change it. I will also say when, if possible, start learning a little bit of Spanish or Nahuatl. Spanish is probably a little easier because Nahuatl, at least, in English, we're used to some of the Romance languages like French and whatnot, Italian and all, in the Western world. But like, try learning a little bit of Spanish. She really, that effort of, she comes from a Spanish speaking country. She comes from a Spanish speaking, peoples in their modern day form. By showing that little bit of effort of trying to, learn her tongue, she will respond to you 10 times fold. Like, she loves it when you give a little extra for yourself, right? And, when you make, just show that effort, right? We should do that with all of our relationships. Always show effort, give a little bit of ourselves, and try something new, to show the person that we care, right? To show this, right? And right, so we're gonna learn a little bit of Spanish. We're gonna make sure our sources are Latine. We also want to make sure that when you go buy your Santa Muerte items, that you buy from Latine businesses. So literally, go into Google Maps, type in Botanica wherever you are. And I don't know about Europe per se, but type in Botanica here in the States, and you'll see where, like in the Mexican neighborhoods, Latino neighborhoods, botanicas are essentially Latino metaphysical shops, brujeria, curandismo shops, right? They will almost more than likely have Santa Muerte paraphernalia, and give your money to them. Don't give it to Amazon, to the big box corporations, right? Like, give your money back to the community. You'll be supporting your local economy anyways. You'll be sort of supporting, a family. We should be buying local no matter what. Really, we should be doing our best to do that regardless. But yeah, really, like, make sure, like, buy from Latino owned shops. There's you can even, like, if you look up mercado, right? I can't even say that word in English properly. Mercado. Those are like Mexican Latino grocery stores. Sometimes they'll even have candles for her. The dollar store in a Latino neighborhood might have it, right? But you don't, at least that's in the neighborhood. But try to go for a botanica or a local mercado or something, right? Disco Aztecas are another one. Disco, as in, like, staying alive, disco, right? Disco Aztec, Disco Aztecas are another place you'll commonly find something about the statuary and such. And so really, yes, buy from the community, support our peoples. Also listen to Latino voices, right? Don't try to tell us, especially, don't try to tell other Latinos how to work with her, how to venerate. Just because you went and bought the statue from a botanica, and you bought a book by a brown author, and you attended this class by a brown speaker, don't necessarily take that as a pass to talk over brown voices if you're not brown. So these are other ways in which we can make sure that we are holding space for the community where she comes from. And this will also help us understand that this is, again, a Latino phenomenon, a Latino cultural phenomenon, and that our system works because it works. And conform your practice to hers, not her to your practice. One thing with your altar, she doesn't like sharing space. She does not. Don't add her to your altar with Hecate and Sekhmet and your other divine femmes and whatnot. Like, she has her own altar and her own altar space. That is something I missed. That is something big. Do not, she has her own altar space. She's a bit of a diva with that. She also likes being the highest altar in the room. She'll get mad at you if she's like below others. She's deaf. She takes us all, right? And again, avoid that Tracy Rollins book. I'd also avoid any book by the woman named Katrina Rasbold. She has actively done some really harmful work towards the Latino magical community in Sacramento, California, where I'm from. So I would definitely stay away from that. So to end this almost 30 minutes late, here's some extra resources. This is what I figure a lot of y'all also want. So books, Devoted to Death by Andrew Chestnut. Again, he's a white dude, but he's got the pass. He also does say that Santa Muerte is most likely European, so take that a little bit with a grain of salt. But he was also really good friends with Dona Queta. He interviewed her. He went down there. He went to Tepito and he did the work. So Chestnut gets the pass. La Santa Muerte by Tomás Prower. It was the first book published in English about La Santa Muerte by a Latino. He's this super rad ginger Latino. Like, I had the pleasure of meeting him at a pagan convention right before lockdown. He's super cool. If you're well versed in magic in general, a lot of that book is going to be repeats. There's going to be a lot of just go basics 101. The what's the word? The audience that he was aiming for was Catholics who are coming new into the sort of like candles and altars and whatnot, like that sort of world, right? More witchy world. So he goes over a lot of Magic 101, sympathetic magic, candle magic, that kind of stuff. But it's still a really good resource for information on Santa Muerte. There's Secrets of Santa Muerte by Cressida Stone. I've heard some mixed reviews on this one. I personally enjoyed it when I read it. It does change a couple things that I've historically seen with La Muerte's traditions. But it does have a great review by Chestnut, as well as Arely Vasquez, again, that trans woman from New York, who was my introduction to the cult of La Muerte. So, especially with Vasquez giving her blessing, giving Stone her blessing, I'm like, all right, that sounds pretty rad. Santa Muerte Devotion 101 by Arnold Rosillo. Great little book. I think he self-published this through Amazon. So definitely recommend checking his stuff out. The Mexican Witch Lifestyle by Valeria Morales. She is rad. I've been, I had the pleasure of being able to chat with her a bit several years ago. That's probably like 7 years ago, on Instagram when I first was doing a lot of this. She's super rad, super knowledgeable. She's a New Orleans based witch. Check her out on social media too. She's pretty cool. And then The Magical Powers of the Holy Death by Victoria Rey. That is the English translation of the Santa Muerte Bible. That is, if you speak Spanish, if you read Spanish, definitely recommend getting the Spanish version, the La Santa Viola de Santa Muerte. Otherwise, The Magical Powers of the Holy Death by Victoria Rey is amazing. You can find it at some botanicas, but honestly, this is one of the other times I will tell you Amazon is a little easier because Ray just doesn't have the distribution that people like with Llewellyn and Weiser backing and such. So a lot of her stuff is just available through Amazon, right? On YouTube, Janelle Longoria. If you've ever typed in Santa Muerte to YouTube and you saw this Chicana with like these like the sort of like chola eyebrows that are on fleek. Like she is, that was her. She's amazing. She's wonderful. I love her work. Reverend Yuri is a non-binary occultist based out of New Orleans. A non-Latino, but um, absolutely rad, really, really respectful person, and just I'm good friends with their partner. Mysterious Leroy is another good YouTuber uh, for a lot of like good history and whatnot. And then Zoe Pozo Zamora, she's in Spanish, so if you don't speak English, it might be a little difficult, but the top three are really the only ones in English that are actually like worth any credit. And Zamora's stuff is just really, really good. If you're able, if I don't know if any of her videos translate to English, I've never really checked personally, but if they do, definitely check them out. TikTok, Miteka Siwat Denver. She is a good friend of mine. She's awesome, amazing artist, hand makes a lot of jewelry, great devotee. Definitely check her stuff out, especially if you're locally here in Denver. Tell her Adonay sent you. Like, I cannot speak more highly. I cannot speak high enough of her products and her work. Um, another TikToker, Dusk 8 is really rad, really good, knowledgeable videos, some funny ones, some good, like just really rad. And then Phoenix and Miklan, she is another good informational TikToker. Um, Absolutely, I love her work. She does a lot of like dispelling rumors and how do you do this particular prayer and this particular how to use this particular color, and she goes into a lot of in depth on that one. So I love her. Really good stuff. And then related content because nothing exists in a vacuum. The Modern Art of Brujeria by Lou Flores, a friend of mine. Definitely recommend checking that book out for a good introduction to Brujeria. It has got some good spells, some good herbal magic stuff in there. He is just so knowledgeable. And then Veneration Rites of Curandismo by Erika Buenaflor. Find her on Instagram as well. I don't know if she's on TikTok. I have her on I follow her on Instagram. I learn something new from this woman every day. Her books are fantastic. Like, get every single one as you possibly can. If you've been looking into soul retrieval stuff too, and you don't want it from some hippy dippy festival type of person, um her book on soul retrieval is also really phenomenal. New Orleans Voodoo by Kenneth Filan, uh amazing book that details the history of New Orleans, voodoo in New Orleans, how Katrina changed a lot of that, and how the practice differs from like Haitian voodoo, Haitian voodoo, voodoo, and those sorts of things. And then Santeria, the Religion by Megine Gonzalez, Gonzalez Whippler. She grew up with Santeria the way a lot of people here in the States grow up with Christianity. And Santeria, the Religion is one of the first books on Santeria from an anthropological perspective by an anthropologist who was raised with the culture, who's brown, like, is phenomenal book. Phenomenal book. Again, Santeria is a actively closed tradition. Um, so the book will only tell you so much. But it gives you at least a good context for when you're looking at some of the Santa Muerte stuff. New Orleans voodoo is a lot more open. And so the kind of Filan one's a good one. And then curandismo and brujeria. So like I was mentioning earlier, Santa Muerte and these traditions, they're not closed. Like, you can be white, you can be a cishet white guy and work with La Muerte if you really want, if you want. But it's more about the work that you do. Put in the effort, put in the time, put in the research, put in the respect, right? So that's really the big thing. I will say, working on La Muerte, that's definitely more the case. Being non-Latino and calling yourself a bruja will definitely ruffle a lot of feathers. Same with curandismo, simply because there's already practices similar enough to these already from Europe, and other old world countries. So your mileage may vary there. And then I think the only other thing I forgot to touch on is the sex magic portion. So, um, yeah, traditionally, historically, people have said you can't even be naked in front of La Muerte. Like, you need to like change in another room. You gotta, you can't even show, like, you can't step out of the shower with her altar right there and just walk to your room. Like, you need to like keep everything covered, right? Um, and you don't do anything sexual in front of her because that is disrespectful, right? A lot of that comes out of the Catholicism and the shame around sex and the shame around the body and the sin. Um, the Mexika didn't have that much clothing to cover themselves with in that sort of fashion, right? Like, just if you look at what we were wearing as indigenous people, we didn't cover ourselves up to like, oh my god, the wrist, the ankles, right? Like, we just didn't. And I so that I think is one point, but also I find it'd be really weird of of Santa Muerte to be like pro sex worker, pro queer, pro femme, but then like tell you to keep all that in the closet. Though, like, none of that literally makes sense. So a lot of us are starting to change that narrative, trying to work with her in a different way, utilizing sex magic rituals with her, be it monofocal or dual focal, or tri or polyfocal. But you just want to make sure that anybody you are working sex magic with her, if it's dual or polyfocal, that they are also devotees, that your intentions align, and that goes with any sex magic, really. um, you don't want any unwilling participants. But yeah, that's my 2.5 hour ramble, info dump of La Muerte. I just want to say thank you for sticking with me, and as I went over, um, this has been a lot of fun. I'm going to stop the recording, and then, or should I ask questions and while that records? I don't know. Like, what's the protocol?
No, it's totally okay to stop the recording and then do questions. Totally.
Cool. So I'm gonna where's the recording button?
And just in case there was anything that people missed, or if they want to make sure that they have all of these lists of resources, this recording will be on our YouTube channel, and this slideshow will be on our website.
Yeah, I'm stoked for that. So ending. No. I don't know how to turn off the recording. Oh, here we go. Stop recording. Boom.